All right.
Yeah.
So, finally, we have the NFC West. And so the NFC West is an interesting division because I feel like the projections for this division are kind of all over the place. A lot of people are doubting the 49ers' ability to repeat with Jimmy Garoppolo, especially with their efficient season. A lot of people love the Seahawks and Russell Wilson to be an MVP and competitive challenging division and conference challenging team this year. A lot of people love the Cardinals to take that step forward. They might be the most hyped up team this offseason. And then we have the Rams, who are 2 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance and historic seasons on their own. So for me personally, I've projected this vision different than all the others in terms of the ceiling and the floors for this team. But I do have the 49ers remaining the division winners, sticking in first place with an 11-5 record, and that's mostly just because I love Kyle Shanahan, and I think that he has at least the ability to repeat for this 1 year.
Yeah, for sure. I have the 49ers winning with the exact same record, 11-5. And I'm going to say something about the 49ers that definitely goes against the popular belief, the popular take on social media. I actually think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to take a step up this year. I think he's going to come out of his shell a little bit. I think they're going to rely on him a bit more. Last year, you saw a team that dominated on the defense side of the ball and had one of the most creative running attacks we've seen in recent memory. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo has untapped potential. They didn't really ask him to do a whole lot last year. He showed flashes of making big plays, but he also showed a little bit of indecisiveness when they kind of relied on him more. I think he's going to take a step up in his maturity, in his decision making, and we're going to see a guy that we all saw go 3-1 with the New England Patriots when Tom Brady is out. The guy who we all said, wow, this guy needs to be the starting quarterback. You know, I believe in the hype that he had when he was traded to San Francisco. I think this guy is being kind of bashed on for no reason. So I'm really interested to see how he progresses this year. I'm a big believer in him. I think they filled kind of the holes that they lost with, they lost Emmanuel Sanders. They added Brandon Ayuk, two very similar players. They lost DeForest Buckner. They added Javon Kinlaw, who won't be as good as Buckner was in year one, but definitely has upside to, at least, produce some of what DeForest Buckner gave the 49ers last year. I think Robert Saleh proved last year that he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the league to match arguably a top 3 offensive coordinator in this league. So as you said, because of Kyle Shanahan, because of the coaching scheme, and because I think their quarterback play will improve this year, I don't see why the 49ers shouldn't take this division and go 11-5.
Yeah, and I mean, you summed it up well. There's just one more point I want to make, and that's another team comparison I thought of on my own. I wanted to bring it up to you, see what you think about it. And that is comparing this 49ers team to their in-division rivals, the Rams, when McVay arrived. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
So take last season, 49ers, and when McVay arrived to the Rams. Okay? So, in McVay's first season, the Rams, it was McVay's first season, Jared Goff's second year, and the Rams jumped up 7 wins that season to an 11-5 record. Okay? This past year, it was Shanahan's second season, and Garoppolo's second year, but basically his first year as a starter, after the injury derailed his actual first year. The 49ers jumped up 9 wins. Okay? So they both made big jumps and wins after having first or second year coaches and quarterbacks. The Rams had 2 seasons of dominance, including a Super Bowl appearance. The 49ers have their Super Bowl appearance and are going into their second year of dominance. Both of these coaches, Shanahan and McVay, are young, innovative, offensive mind head coaches. Okay? Though division winners are subject to change, and this is a competitive division, I think the 49ers are able to keep it going by, as you touched on, shifting more of the focus to Garoppolo in what is an efficient offensive scheme and a very good defense, and have the ability to fend off these rising teams underneath them and stay above.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not gonna lie, that comparison didn't come to mind, but after what you've said, I'd have to agree with you. I could definitely see the especially the McVay. Why am I blanking right now? The McVay. Shanahan, thank you. Comparison, I actually think Shanahan's an even better coach than McVay. So yeah. I don't really see any logical argument for why, with him at the helm, the 49ers would be much worse than they were last year. Like, I don't see how they go from they were 13-3 if I'm correct last year.
They were.
Yeah, how they go from 13-3 to 9-7 or 8-8. I don't see how that would happen. I could definitely see them regressing to an 11-5 like we both have. But I like that comparison. I think they're contenders once again this year. Their roster is so complete, and the scheme is so perfectly built around this roster. It complements the roster and the scheme complement each other so well that they're going to compete for the next 2-3 years. I don't really see any drop off from them at all, and I think teams should be very, very worried about them and facing them this year, just like they were last year.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, as I said before, I have a little bit of an interesting spin on this division, and I'm sure you're not far off from me. But the reason I say that is because I have the next three teams, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks, all at 8-8.
Interesting. Okay. So,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just before you get into your point, so I actually have the Seahawks in second at 9-7, the Cardinals in third at 9-7, and a hot take I have the Rams at 5-11 in fourth.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Wow.
So that
is a hot take. That might be the hottest take of this podcast so far.
Yeah. Anyway, so you go ahead and you can do your team by team breakdowns, and then I'll get into my rationale behind some of those picks.
Okay, well, I'll start with the Seahawks since you have them in second. Again, all these teams at 8-8, so you can interchange them any which way you want from 2 to 4. My main argument for this is Russell Wilson's the only thing stopping this team from going 5-11, and I truly believe that. I think if you replace Russell Wilson with any average quarterback in the league, this team doesn't sniff 500. And for the Seahawks to do any better than 9 wins this year, it would have to be either historically efficient or historically lucky. Now, they can get there, again, because they have the second best quarterback in the league, an MVP candidate, and one of the greatest QBs that we've witnessed play. And I know that they're one of the most hyped up teams this offseason. The public is backing them like you would not believe. They're in win now mode with their most recent acquisitions. But with their team build structure, again, no pass rush at all. Their coaching staff, Pete Carroll, I don't trust him at this point in time. Just based off of the fact that they're not letting Russ cook, which is the narrative, right? It's let Russ cook. Well, they're not doing that. If they do that, sure, they have a chance to exceed my expectations, but it doesn't look like they will. I'm fading the public, and I'm putting one of my best bets at the Seahawks going under 9.5 wins.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, obviously I have them at 9-7, and not really going to touch on the offense because you summed it up perfectly. It's all about Russell Wilson. In my eyes, he's as good as Patrick Mahomes. I know a lot of people want to say Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. It's not even close. Well, I disagree. It is close. Russell Wilson is in that tier. They're in their own tier, 1 and 2, and then it's everyone else. So I also want to go, I'm going to say another hot take potentially, but I think the acquisition of Jamal Adams isn't going to do anything for this team. In my opinion, yes, I understand how good he is, and while I think he will, he's not like he's going to go down and play, but I just don't think it's really, I didn't really understand the move, to be honest with you, when they made it. It definitely improves their safety tandem, but I just don't see how he addresses their biggest issue. Their biggest issue is Pete Carroll. I think with Pete Carroll at the helm and the philosophy that they have, they're limiting the chances they have to both maximize Russell Wilson and potentially win a Super Bowl. I just don't see that happening with the current coaching staff. I think that's what's holding back the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're totally right. And just an interesting stat I want to bring up on Pete Carroll compared to everyone else in the league is the Seahawks' percentage of snaps in base defense, right? They're 4-3, no nickel. Because nickel's basically the base defense, right?
Yeah.
The Seahawks ran base defense at 69% last year. The second closest were the Arizona Cardinals at 38%, and the NFL average is 27%. Pete Carroll seems to have something against adapting into better philosophies and how the league is changing, and I think that's just going to come back to bite them this year, and this is the year it all changes, because you know what? When you have a guy like Russell Wilson, I don't like this projection. I don't like projecting the Seahawks at 8-8 because they have Russell Wilson. But this is the point we're at right now. So we'll see if they can overcome it. It's entirely possible that they do, as I'm projecting them much, much lower than most people have them. Even you are. But I mean, I'm gonna have to see it for them to prove me wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, moving on. So in third, we both have, well, you have a tie, but in third, I have the Arizona Cardinals, so we'll touch on them first. I really like this team. I just want to say my reasoning behind that is, of course, the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. It doesn't really need much analysis. The guy is just a proven playmaker, has arguably the best hands in the NFL, can just go up, and when you need him to make a play, he is your guy. I definitely don't think he's going to receive like the targets that he did in Houston, because I think we've seen with Arizona, they're a team that really likes to keep the defense honest and mix up their options. They like to spread the ball around. And the main reason I think they're going to go 9-7 is I'm a huge Kyler Murray believer. I mentioned Dak Prescott earlier as a dark horse MVP candidate. Well, I'm going to throw Kyler Murray into that conversation as, you know, out of all the guys, like we've seen in the last 2 years, the last two MVPs have been second-year quarterbacks who have taken the jump, right? Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not necessarily saying that's going to be a trend heading into this year, but Kyler Murray is a guy I could see taking that step up. Kingsbury, he's kind of a weird coach. Like he honestly impressed me last year. I didn't expect much of him, but I think he's a good enough offensive mind that he can make Kyler Murray a true weapon on the level of what we saw from Lamar Jackson last year. I don't know if he's going to reach it this year, but I think at one point he's going to be that true dual threat. But he's even more of a talented passer than Lamar. While he is not as good as a runner, he makes up for that in pure abilities. The playmaking potential I saw from him last year really impressed me. Despite his height, I don't think that's really going to be an issue. As long as he can run, as long as he stays healthy, and they find ways to protect him, which they did last year with a pretty lackluster offensive line, I love Kyler Murray as a player. I really think he's going to take a step up. And to touch on the defense, that was one of the worst, or I think maybe the worst unit in the league last year. I think Isaiah Simmons, I believe in him so much that I think him alone will jump this defense up quite a few ranks. I think he'll have a similar type season to Derwin James as a rookie. I can really see that. I'm buying into the hype, just like I'm buying into the hype of this team. So I think they take a step up on defense. I think Kyler Murray takes a huge step up on offense, and he's the main reason for me having them go from a pretty poor or mediocre to poor team to a 9-7 winning season.
All right. So I like those points. I'm not as aboard the Kyler Murray MVP train as you are. I don't hate the take. It's not something I would personally bet on. But I have two things to say. One, I am fully with you on Isaiah Simmons. I think he was the most can't miss prospect in this draft class outside of maybe Joe Burrow. And I think he's going to do wonders for a defense. He fits such a big need for them, and they can utilize him in such a way roaming the middle of the field that, yes, I agree. I think that defense is going to take a step forward. in terms of the offense in Kingsbury, the one thing I wanted to say is that the Cardinals ranked 16th in scoring and 21st in total yards per game last season. That came up, they jumped almost 10 teams in both of those categories. And considering the context with a first-year NFL head coach, a rookie quarterback, and a poor offensive line, those raw numbers are incredibly impressive, just given the jump. You can see that scheme work immediately. Now, we know things in year one usually work. That don't work as well in year two once the NFL adapts a little bit more. But the addition of DeAndre Hopkins and the natural development of this second-year head coach and quarterback is one that results in a spike in win total quite often. So I have them at 8-8 because I think this division is going to be competitive, and I'm hesitant to buy on a full-on breakout. But I do see the potential there. I think if they had a little bit more on the O-line and a little bit more beef on that defensive line, just they up the trenches a little bit, I'd be buying into a 10-win season. Because they don't have that right now, I'm a little bit more hesitant. I think they're going to be more around 500. But I like the direction this team is going in, and it wouldn't surprise me to see 9 wins.
Absolutely. Before we move on, I do want to say I'm not putting Kyler Murray as my dark horse MVP. I think that's Dak Prescott. I just wanted to say that behind Dak Prescott, he's the only other guy I would consider for dark horse MVP, because in reality, he is a true dark horse. No one is predicting him to win MVP. But
no, for sure. Yeah, no, I totally understand. That's not a best bet or anything, because that definitely is a dark horse.
But I really like him. I think he's going to be a truly great quarterback, and I think that could happen as soon as this year. Okay, so moving on to the Rams. Here we have a disagreement in record. So
yeah, we do.
Before I get into my reasoning for why I think they're going to be so poor, why don't you explain why you think they're going to be about the same as the Seahawks and the Cardinals?
So all I'll say is what a difference one season can make. Yeah. Here we are this year looking at the Rams. You have them at 5-11. At this time last year in this offseason, the Rams are coming off a 13-3 NFC Championship win. We're not projecting them at 5-11 at that point, not even remotely close. Now they're coming off a mediocre 9-7 regression-filled season, and as evidence here, maybe one of the most least hyped or talked about teams going into this season. So I know you'll bring up a point about Jared Goff, and I'm not about to disagree with you on anything negative you're going to say about Jared Goff. I don't really like him as a quarterback. I think he's mid-tier at best. I see why you have them regressing. I just disagree to the point. I think that, like, when you look at this roster and the team that they have around, I know the O-line isn't there anymore. I know they're built off of offense, but they still have the core of at least an average team. And for that reason, I wouldn't project them to go as low as 5-11. But that's also the reason I wouldn't project them to go as high as winning the division. I think they did take a step back, and they're not going to be what they were 1 or 2 seasons ago. But I also don't think they're as bad as to put them as bottom of the league.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm going to be honest. The reason I have them at 5-11 is partially because I didn't really have a super hot take, and I wanted one. But I'll obviously give some reasoning behind why I think the Rams could go 5-11. First off, yeah, Jared Goff. I'm not going to hate on him maybe as much as you thought. I just think he's average. I'm not going to lie. I think he's average to slightly above average. I think he relies on a tremendous offensive mind in Sean McVay, but he's just limited. He's just not a guy that can really think for himself, I think. He has arm talent. He can make throws, but he's just not a guy that has that elite processing, the ability to kind of, come up to the line and make adjustments that are going to work, or see changes in defense, read coverages at an elite level. I just don't think that's what Jared Goff is, and that's fine. You can still win. I mean, they made it to the Super Bowl with him playing like that. But I just look at this roster, and while it does have some top-end talent, like just to name a few, obviously Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, On the defensive side of the ball, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are solid wide receivers. On the offensive side of the ball, I just see a mediocre roster, a very mediocre roster. They have one good cornerback, two poor cornerbacks. They have a decent free safety and a good strong safety in John Johnson, but they don't have playmakers at linebacker. They have one true playmaker on the defensive line and three average guys. They have an average offensive line, an average quarterback, and a good wide receiver core. That is the only reason why I could see them going 5-11, despite the fact that I think with Sean McVay, just because of how good of a coach he is, I could see why people would say 5-11. There's no way with McVay, but McVay didn't really impress me last year. I think they kind of figured him out. So I'll be really curious to see if he comes back with something new this year that kind of injects new life in the Rams. Because if he doesn't, then I think this 5-11 season, while I won't say it's likely, it's definitely possible. Would I bet on that? No. Is it more of a hot take just to have a hot take? Well, kind of, but I think it's realistic. It's a realistic hot take. So those are my thoughts on the Rams.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we can cap off the divisions there.
Faux show.
All right. All right. Let me know when you ended it.
Yeah, end it right now.